Hey everybody, this is Patrick Haslow. Can you guys hear me? Just starting the meeting now. And we'll see if everyone connects okay here. I'm not sure how many of you have taken previous CGMA courses, but I believe they all use the same Zoom meetings. I assume they do. This is the only course that I teach is CGMA, sorry, but yeah, Zoom meetings seem to work okay. Okay, so I guess we'll get started here. Today I'm going to talk about a few things. It'll be a little bit broad ranging. It'll deal a little bit with the assignment we had for week 1. And as always, if you guys have any questions, please type them in the chat and I will certainly take a pause and answer. Whatever you really feel like talking about, that's fine too. So let's see, I wanted to also check the forums, make sure I wasn't missing any questions from the live Q&A forums. I'm going to do that. I didn't see any earlier today, but maybe some more got added. Let's see, forums. Oh, okay, never mind. I guess I checked, I didn't refresh my screen. There are a few questions here indeed. Yeah, okay, maybe I'll, I think what I might do is maybe, since these are kind of broad-ranging questions, maybe I'll just start off with these before I get into the topics that kind of have to do with the workflow and doing blockouts for levels, things like that. Okay, in order of posting, we have a question from Andy. So you said your goal is more to be on the art side of environment design and production. What are valuable skills to have as an artist working in games? That's and then is programming a valuable skill to have? What kind of programming would you recommend starting with? Programming for game mechanics or something else? Scripting for 3D pipeline tools? This is kind of this question is kind of a broad multi-part question, I guess. Well, as obviously as the title for the course describes, this course won't touch too much on art. We will touch on art as to how it relates to level design. As you can see in the first assignment, it dealt with how the level designer is sometimes asked to base their work off of concept art, that kind of thing. They normally don't create concept art on their own. As far as modeling assets for the game goes, the days of level designers doing that are long since gone. Once meshes became the dominant form of environment art in games, as opposed to BSP type geometry, which disappeared with, like, I don't know, I guess the Quake 3 era of games. It's pretty much entirely, the art's pretty much out of the level designer's hands. If you have an interest in that, I know the majority of CGMA courses are actually on art. This course here is one of the few that is not. And the other, they have another course, it's sort of a survey or an intro course about Unity. That's the only other course I could recommend for level design. But if you want to definitely get into the art side of things, they have various tracks at CGMA that I would look into, but that's generally not my area. I did come from an art background myself, not in games, but I was trained as a commercial illustrator. And I did that for a few years before I found games to be a lot more fun and rewarding for me, so I did that. So yeah, that's about all I can really say about the art side of things. About programming skills, well, the nearest analogy to programming that I could mention would be scripting. I saw that in a lot of some of the assignments that were turned in this week, I can see that some of you have some scripting skills. Maybe you've used Unity before, maybe you're familiar with C#, I'm not sure, but I saw a few of you had some scripts included. And that's, as far as programming goes for a level designer, it's usually, it is broken down to what they call scripting. It's usually not programming so much. More often, it's not always true. I have seen a few job descriptions where they do actually use a programming language or something very much like that in their games. One of the first games I worked on was a multiplayer segment of the Ghostbusters game several years ago. And that was a proprietary scripting language they used in that. It was called, I think it was called Dante Script. And that was kind of, it was object oriented. It was somewhat similar to C++ from what I know. And it was entirely, you know, it was like a text based, character based sort of scripting language. So that's as far usually as level designers will have to do it. Other times there will be a visual scripting language that's used. In my work professionally, I've used over the years, the majority of what I've done has been in Unreal. I used Unreal Engine 3 on the Homefront game, BioShock Infinite. It's visual, like I said, it's a visual scripting language. If you haven't seen it before, it looks kind of like a flowchart. And it uses a lot of nodes. There isn't a lot of having to worry about syntax and stuff like that that you get in like C# here in Unity or other scripting languages. And then in Unreal Engine, which I use a lot now and I've used recently before that, that's also, it uses the blueprint system. That's also visual scripting. So there is an analogy there. If you do know programming, you will understand scripting more. But again, some level designers in games, they deal more with level geometry, level design as it applies to the building player spaces, and that's the majority, or that's pretty much the entirety of this course. Really, is that is building spaces for games, and that's mostly, or yeah, just about all of what Amelia's lectures deal with. So you know, it's a skill that's useful later, but some studios have a more of a balance toward scripting, some have more toward building spaces. Depends where you work. So yeah, that's the best way I can address that question. Okay, so let me see. The next question posted was from Aranaklam. I think I'm saying that right. If not, maybe he can correct me at some point. He says, is a maze considered a good level design? If not, what are elements which can be added to make a maze level interesting? So I'm assuming when you say maze, you mean the stereotypical maze, like of a say like what's a good example? Oh, like something like this, I guess. Yeah, I mean, the Maze of the Minotaur kind of thing, that sort of thing. So let me go back to the question. I'm sorry, I lost the thread here. There it is. Okay. I would say a maze, if you're going to use something as a sort of purposefully misleading as a maze or purposefully confusing as a maze, you have to think about the goals of the level. You have to think about the emotional impact you're trying to have on the player, that kind of thing. I haven't played a level in a long time in a first or a third person game that was literally a maze. I'm trying to think of an example. The only time I remember playing a maze level that had a strong impact on the, like, say, my emotional state in the game, the way it was intended in the game, was probably way back in the Silent Hill series. Some of the older ones, they did this thing where they had this neat trick in that game where you were in maybe like an interior or an exterior environment, usually interior, I think. And when you enter this sort of mirror hell dimension or whatever it was, they did this trick where when you went through a door, you would exit into another place on the map that wasn't what the map said it was. So it was done to disorient you, but it was a horror game. So I feel like that made a lot of sense as to why they did that. But I would say, generally speaking, when you if you're going to use a maze, and this is interesting you bring this up because the word maze is used by Amelia in some of the future assignments. Um, I think you have to. I like to think of it only as an exploration space that's maybe a little open-ended. You let the player have free roam of where they go. I think if you're going to do a maze, I think too many dead ends, not a good thing. So again, I wouldn't literally create that image that I showed earlier. I just sort of think about that when you build things. So overall, I think it's best to avoid something that's most like a literal maze. Um, so yeah, so Ryan had a question. I didn't post the question on the forums, but I'll add it here. I found building on slopes and at angles to be difficult. Verts and edges do not align, gaps, overlaps, etc. What things do you do to alleviate building on anything off grid? Well, first of all, yes, as much as possible, you do want to stay on the grid. Um, One of the things, I forget if you, in your assignment offhand, I'm not sure if you were working more in Maya or you did more of your geometry directly in Unity. But if things did not align, I'm not sure. I guess I should ask if you'd used if you'd kept the snapping option to the grid on. That's generally a good idea as well as a level designer, since you're doing blockouts and you have to obey. You're often trying to build things that obey the game mechanics. They obey the player mechanics. You want to generally try to stick to a grid. That's why, like, I didn't find the default. Okay, yeah, so you're using ProBuilder. Yeah, I have, as you can see in my window, I have ProBuilder installed too, and ProGrids, which are actually they're two different packages. Like when you go to the package manager, if anyone hasn't installed these, you can see how is this done. ProBuilder is there. I thought ProGrids was a separate package, but it's not showing that way. Oh, that's right. I think it's because when I created this new project for this course, it gave me the option to install ProGrids like right there when I created the new package, or I should say the new what's this you're looking for? ProGrids Advanced. Hmm. Anyway, okay, so you used Hammer and BSP. Okay, so yeah, Hammer is that's funny. That actually goes back to when I mentioned the Quake 3 games. Like yeah, maps and hammers, I think I'm gonna guess and say that it's the most widely used remaining BSP editor that you could use. Um, like I said, my early mod career started off doing like maps in like Quake 3 engine, older id Tech stuff, and Hammer was an early offshoot of that technology. But ProBuilder, I mean, ProBuilder is almost it creates meshes on the fly, but it's almost a return. The way it works is almost a return to BSP. Um, yeah. So I'm curious. I'm not sure why you had problems aligning. If you're doing, I can show you one way of working today where because it's blockouts, being really super tight and really super accurate won't be as important when I show you kind of one way that you can work. Um, as long as you're still obeying player movement mechanics and you feel you can move around your space comfortably. A lot of times, well, in Unity in this course especially, even though Amelia shows a lot of working in Maya, that's her workflow at her job at Naughty Dog. For me, I don't use Maya. In the past, I've had to use Max a bit. I used it a bit at Ubisoft, and I used it a few jobs ago, I had to use it. But generally speaking, a lot of in a lot of level design positions at a lot of studios, you'll be given a lot of sort of prefab meshes ready to use. They're almost like Lego blocks. In fact, at Ubisoft, they called them Legos, and they were shapes that were just they ranged from primitives like this one that I made recently, like like wedges of various kinds that were like at 90 degrees or not 90 degrees, um, and they pretty much involved placing the meshes in the level editor and just keeping them snapping to a grid. And sometimes they were really exact. Like there were some kits at my job now that I use sometimes, sometimes I don't, where there'd literally be like uh, doorways that were measured to exactly the right specs of the game. There'd be walls and varying units of like, here's a 2 meter section of wall, here's a 4 meter section of wall. Here's a window with a window frame, and they all like perfectly snapped. They were very basic, but they allowed the level designer to just snap them all together on the grid and have their space blocked out simply but very cleanly, instead of having to remodel the bespoke geometry the way Amelia did. But a lot of different ways work. I often, at my job too, when I use Unreal and I block out levels, I just use primitives a lot of time. I just go with the cylinders, spheres, cubes, rectangles, like everything, planes. I go in that route. I'll show you a bit of that soon. Um, but oh yeah, okay. The last question I wanted to get to was from Tatovic. How do level designers study other games levels? Are there any techniques or guidelines? Yeah, Arun mentioned GDC talks. Yes, that's definitely good. Um, this is a really good question because a lot of times when you apply for jobs as a level designer, they oftentimes in the test, the people giving you the test are trying to discern if you can think critically and analytically about level design, and a lot of times they'll ask you to provide your favorite examples of certain kinds of certain level designs and certain kind of games. In the past, I remember I'd applied for when I applied originally at Irrational Games. I applied for a co-op. They were doing a co-op mode in the Bioshock Infinite that was ultimately they didn't have time to finish it, so they cut it. But so my test that I was given, they asked a lot questions of me about my thoughts of you know things that I noticed when I was studying other games that I thought were successful co-op games. They wanted me to provide examples of that. They wanted me to think about how the spaces were built to promote co-op gameplay. They wanted me to think about game mechanics that promoted co-op gameplay, rules of the game, things like that. Um, I think the biggest thing, I mean, the best thing you can do is they just generally in these kinds of positions, they want people who are hiring they want to know that you play plenty of games and you understand what makes them work. Yeah, I mean, not only is GDC good, but there's if you ever look at the Gamma Sutra, I'll just reply in the thread here. If you ever go to Gamma Sutra, um, that's a great source too. There's a lot of good blog posts by people who work in games. Uh, I would check that out definitely. I even go there and read things a lot of times myself, and yeah, I would check that out as well. Um, as far as like guidelines about studying things, I mean, one thing I think it's important to do when you try to work in any job, whether it's like level design or anything else, is they talk about following your passion, that kind of thing. Uh, so one thing you might want to do is you might want to just concentrate on the kinds of games you really want to make or play. Um, and compare and contrast them. Think about how you would improve them, that kind of thing. Like, be really critical, be appreciative of things you think that work really well in those games, and be critical and think about how they could work better if you did them. Oftentimes, again, those are the questions pop up on level design tests all the time, really. So that's the most I could really, best things I could think about to say about that. Okay, so let me see. I have a few topics here. I'm going to just I'm going to go back and forth between some technical stuff. Even though this course is not a course on Maya, it's not a course on Unity. The tools are used, but they're only used as a means to an end. They're only used to build level designs, right? So one of the things I wanted to talk about was in a lot of the level work that was handed in. Um, and it's not always a necessity. It depends. A lot of people work in different ways, but one thing I could recommend, when we talked about grids before, not only is like a grid system like ProGrid's your friend, but also the material, the AutoGrid material that was provided by Amelia is also very useful. Let's see if I can find, I always forget where this stuff is. Is it maps? New scene? Okay, here we go. So this is, I believe, the basic. Yeah, here we have our basic scene here. This is what Amelia provided as our template to pretty much start. You can use this to start most week's assignments. In future assignments, she also provides sets of assets for you to work with, new prototypes. That was also one of the things she'd mentioned in this week's assignment was she did want you to do your best to try to rebuild what you saw in the concept art. Let me pull that up really quick here. Yeah, the Henri Matisse painting. One of the goals here was to, oof. Okay, things are a little sluggish because of the streaming, I think. But one of the things she wanted us to do was to build this space, but she wanted us to build it so that it obeyed the mechanics and the scale of the game, the scale of the player character, the cowboy guy that we're using. So one of the ways that makes it easy to keep that in mind is this auto grid texture here that she included in this new map file here. So if you want to, because I'm, like I said, I'm definitely not an expert in Maya, but one of the easiest ways I find uh, to work, and I think she was indicating this as well, was to duplicate a lot of this stuff and use it as like a foundation. So you don't have to build everything from scratch. You can, if you get better at Maya, you can, but I find like if you create new prototypes, like she created some that you could use to embellish, embellish the level that you were working on. Like once you built the street in Archeoi, from the painting, you could embellish it with some of the set dressing she gave you, like like some of this foliage there, um, some of this furniture here. Oh, and I have a broken asset there. Don't worry about that. Just things like this she gave you that you could use in your scene. But it's you might want to play around a little bit in Maya and build your own prototypes. But please remember that as I mentioned in the forums, if you're building stuff in Maya, don't export it anymore. Like you can see, don't export it as an MA file. Like here we have libbarrel at .ma. This is a MB file, Maya binary. This is Maya ASCII with the MA. Simply because I believe something may have changed in between when Amelia recorded the lectures and now, which wasn't really that long ago. But it seems like now if you try to update a Maya ASCII file, like say for instance, I have I have this map open or something, or I have this one of these meshes open in Maya. If I save it and update it, sometimes or oftentimes Unity will sit there and spend a very long time trying to like process the changes I made, and you'll be sitting there waiting for sometimes over 5 minutes for your mesh to update, and it's really a pain. So that's why after that happened to me a lot early on when I started teaching the course, and I did some research and found on the Unity website that the official mesh format they recommend and support is FBX. So that's what you want to do. So I'm going to go, speaking of that, I'm going to talk a little bit now about how we can handle this stuff in Maya. Okay, so I'm going to open up the, let's see. I have a workflow that I can recommend if you do want to use Maya to build like prototypes. So I'm going to go to, let's see, we are in Spring, assets, CGMA, maps, not week 1, I guess it's scenes. I already forgot where new map is, guys. Let's look again. Okay, new map is my assets maps. Okay. So we want assets, my assets, maps, and I'll open the new map.ma file here. And it'll pop open. It'll warn me that I'm using student version. And it's gray. If you didn't already know, you want to click this little checkerboard, this very tiny checkerboard button here, which is textured, which shows you the textures. And then you'll see this fun thing that happens, which is you'll see everything's black, which is not useful to you. So I found out through trial and error what's going on here. Basically, if we navigate over here in the attributes, we look up the, we can, as we click on each one of these, we can see the material that it's using, or the whatever they call it, the shader effect shader. And these are the ones that are used by Amelia in the level AutoGrid solid color. You can see the file path to the texture that it's using. And you can see it's referencing not a relative file path, but an absolute one. This was obviously done, you can see it's actually saying it was on the D drive, it had a files, a whole folder structure, Unity project, CGMA, test game 1, assets. So what this means is, it means that when Amelia saved these, Maya saved a hard reference to the texture in question. But if we look at the end of it here, we can see that wherever we keep our CGMA our folder structure, we can see that the file path is here. So we're going to look for white.tga. So it's under assets, CGMA materials, white.tga. Assets, CGMA materials, and there's white. And once it's selected, we can see it shows up. So this is something, if you ever have this problem, you may have to, if you ever want to sort of modify an existing asset that was provided by Amelia for the course, you're first going to want to correct your texture paths like this. And here we have grid 4m, 4meter.tga, and this is the base TGA file that makes AutoGrid useful. This is this grid that we see that's really nice and useful here. So now we can see everything showing up, which is great. So say I want to use this as my basis for building new prototypes, for building kind of prefabbed assets for me to place in the level that make it easier for me to, you know, to sort of block out my scene. So anyway, since this is an MA file, I'm going to save a copy of this. I'm going to do save scene as, and I'm not going to save it under the directory that's referenced by Unity, because if I save an MA file there, every time I change it, Unity is going to think it has to update that in its assets, in the directory of its assets. So you're going to want to avoid that. So what I do is I just save it elsewhere. For me, I just made, like these are my project directories. Yours are probably also under users, your name documents. This is the one I use for this course for the spring semester, CGMA Spring 2019. I made a folder. This is not a directory reference by Unity, but I just made a folder called CGMA_raw. And then you can name it, well, here was one I had earlier. I just called it test. This becomes kind of my playground to build things from. So now it's being saved outside of Unity. So why do we do this? Okay, so now I'm doing this because say I really like this cube. I think this is the best cube I've ever made, and I want to use this in my levels all the time. So when it's selected, you go to File, you want to do Export Selection. And we're going to navigate to, I have it bookmarked here. Say we go to Assets. Because you guys should be saving stuff in My Assets, but I save my stuff in the CGMA folder because I just do, because it's sort of the distinction she made between stuff that the instructor made and stuff that you guys make. So I made this folder, for instance, under prototypes, called basic. I'll put primitives here. I guess I could call it primitives too, but whatever. So we'll call it basic. We'll just call it cube, like 1 meter cube, like that. And I'll export it. So what happens now is we can go to Unity and we can go to prototypes, basic, and we see the cube. So there's an issue with this cube though. If I drag it into my scene, you can see it's barely there. Like, where is it, right? If we look really closely, we can see it is there. Let me go to shaded wireframe again. It's actually there. It's just really low. It's just really tiny. So every time you export an FBX, for reasons I don't understand, you want to look at the properties of it in your asset browser here. And you'll see that this convert units is turned on by default. It's converting 1 centimeter to 0.01 meters. Obviously, these things don't really match up, it seems, between Maya and Unity. I don't really know what the scale difference is, but if you turn this off and you click apply, it should fix it. And then we see it's actually now to proper scale. And turn my snapping on, it snaps to the grid. But we can see a problem. Excuse me. We can see that if we go, excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink of water. Okay. Okay, we go to materials. We see the auto grid is now showing nothing. Like, for some reason, the materials they often don't get extracted when you export as an FBX. I don't even know why. So sometimes you'll have to go and reconnect your materials with this remap function here. So under auto grid, I'll just go to I'll click that button next to it. I'll select my auto grid and I'll apply. And then we can see it's now okay. So what this means is, see this, you can see now, like this, this prefab new map contains these things. But now I have I have a separate asset now that I can use throughout the level as its own thing, really. So another thing that I've done sometimes is, if you want to sort of put together your structure, say I like my cube here, I want to make it more useful, so I can go to Maya, and like I said, this is my, well, this is my sort of playground level. I could duplicate this guy. Let's see. Sorry, I just messed that up. So I'll hold X and I'll snap this to keep it to the grid. Again, even when I'm doing this stuff, man, I hate this left menu in Maya. Even when I am building stuff in Maya, I'm trying to keep stuff snapped to the grid whenever I can. In fact, yeah, I'm just gonna keep that clicked right there. X toggles this and that keeps the grid snap on. I would recommend keeping grid snap on when you're doing like just the real block out stuff, the real like square geometry stuff. So say I want to create, now I want to create sort of default measured pieces to work with down the line. Because my grid's on, I can easily see like, I want walls that are maybe like my standard wall is a 4-meter wall, like this. And I can now export this as, once this is here, I don't think it matters if I have object mode selected, but I can go File, Export Selection, and I can name it Basic Wall. We can just say, let's say it's a 1-meter section of wall, like that. Oh, okay, so I do have to actually do that. Now I learned the hard way. Yeah, so let's call it basic. Yeah. 1 meter. Okay, so now we go here and we can see, we'll have to do this for all of these. It's not that big a deal. We'll have to fix the material references when we go back. So yeah, there's that guy. And then, oh my God, this menu drives me nuts. Okay, so we'll duplicate it with Control D. And we can just keep making edits here. Go back to face mode. Same goes for this. I guess you have to go back to object mode every time. We export the selection here. Now we have our wall 2 meters. And then we duplicate this again. We go to face mode again. And now we have our wall for 4 meters. And you get the idea. And then we can even, we can start getting even more complicated if we want. We can go, say we also know, like, say we have like a cover sheeter. And we know that, we know the scale of certain windows that we want to make. In fact, let's not use this. Let's use this one here. Oops. And we go to face. Let's see, we can go do some extraction here. This is extrude, right? I'll do it again. Like I said, I'm not slick enough in Maya to know all the hotkeys and stuff, so I have to go old school and actually click on menu items. Whoops, oh, I did not mean to do that. Okay. And let's see, same here, extruding. And again, I know Amelia created a lot of like more complicated bespoke geometry, very specific stuff. She'd built out like entirely special, like unique buildings. Like one whole mesh would be a building that you generally wouldn't even duplicate. But I tend to, just for my workflow, I tend to like more modular, tend to like working more modularly like this. It just works for me. It's a little faster for me to work more modularly like that when I can. Oh, you know what? I just realized that my meshes aren't oh my God, they aren't even 4 meters tall. I'll fix that later, I guess. Yeah, so we go here, extrapolate this guy. I have no idea why, when you select extrude, why Maya would think you want to rotate your extrusion. Like, is that what it's doing there? That's really strange. So yeah, here actually let's not extrude. Let's just like delete some faces here. And this is where I get very unfancy with my stuff here. In fact, that might even work, even though I didn't connect vertices or anything like that. I think that might work. Let's see, we go back to object mode. Let's see if this will export okay or not. If we go to basic, we'll just call it window 2 meters. See if this has missing faces or anything weird on it. All right, so yeah, let me just fix that really quick because it's really bothering me that I messed these guys up. But I can't believe I did that, but I did. Because I can't talk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Okay, so quickly, I guess I could re-export these, right? Oh, that's right, I can't right click. I have memory, muscle memory from using Unreal a lot here, and it doesn't work the same. So basic wall, yes. File export selection, basic wall 2 meters, yes. File export selection, basic wall 4 meters, yes. And we'll go back here and fix up all. Can I do multiples? No, I can't. That's too bad. Okay, so auto grid, apply. All right, and remember, of course, keep your units. I think once you do that, I don't know if it keeps that units if you keep re-exporting the mesh. I don't know if it lets you keep that setting or not, but you want to definitely want to check it, make sure. And we go here, convert, auto grid, and finally this one, auto grid. Okay. So the whole point of this, of course, is that if you did it in a way that's useful, it's going to snap now. Good. It should snap. Like I said, if you've created it with the grid snapping on in Maya, and I think it's, let me go back to Maya. Is it under mesh grid snapping? I just saw this a moment ago. Where's grid snapping? Display grid, okay. Yeah, if you click that, these are my settings. I tried to make my subdivisions match the auto grid. So length and width 12, subdivisions every 5. That allows you to do all your work here, and it snaps to the actual lines here on the auto grid as you work. So again, I think it's useful to use, like I know Amelia has, she has like, if I turn off wireframe, it's a little easier to see. But I know she has like this solid color object here too, but I find for your blockouts, I would definitely do more stuff with the auto grid on. I definitely would do that. I think the majority of the work she shows you across the lectures does that as well. So yeah, we can also bring in this window frame, and now we can see it snaps. And now you start, when you build this way, you can now, like, once you have enough of these in the level, say just keep bringing them all in like that. It's nice because then you can suddenly just, they snap, you can just quickly, when you're working, you can quickly just Control D to duplicate these, you know, and then, what is snapping again for that? Control, yeah, Control. That was a weird rotate, but whatever. You know, but my point is you can now quickly like build things like this just by duplicating. Um, and also possible, okay, I guess it's doing some weird progrid rotating there or something. You might also want to make, well, yeah, I guess you can use other pieces and you can overlap them like this to flesh out your design. Like maybe you have things like this where you scale this guy up. You can either scale him with the scale tool like that, or sometimes I just literally type in the Y value like that. Now you can, once you have a thing like that, you can duplicate it and suddenly you can have a series of, you know, like structural details on your work like this. You know, and then you can keep going this way. You can, like I built this window, you can build door frames too, and you can just completely like I used the term Legos before as an analogy, but it's a good one. Like it was kind of smart that for their workflow, Ubisoft called their level designer meshes Legos. Like I said, they were just quickly made by an artist with very little detail. They just were no more complicated than this sometimes. Um, yeah, and then say you want a rooftop, you can let's put in like you can use this wedge maybe. You bring this wedge in, and now to keep it really simple, I don't know, will this actually snap? Just save myself some time, you know. But the nice thing about this auto grid also is because it's not the texture doesn't it isn't bound to the vertices of any mesh you're using. You can see when I move it around, it's actually it's drawing in world space. That makes it easy to overlap your meshes and do clever bits of geometry, like say you wanted to build like a half destroyed wall, you can just duplicate. It's also good, I think it's good to keep wireframe on. It helps you see like the edges of what you're building more easily, so you don't get overwhelmed. But you can like duplicate things like this guy, and suddenly you can have like a partially destroyed wall. You can just get kind of clever with it sometimes like that. And then you turn off your wireframe, and you go and play with it, and suddenly it looks like you did some more complicated geometry work. This is this is the way I work, just because I like working in the editor. I don't personally, just for my workflow, and whatever works for you is fine. But I like building things like this directly in the editor, where then I can just like once I'm done building, I can just hit play, and I can very quickly just like be right next to my work and see it, you know, like this. I just like how fast and immediate that is. And again, like as a level designer, I'm often not required to, or nobody's really required to build some very complicated geometry. So sometimes keeping it simple like this is the best option. I mean, you can still get as complicated as you want. Um, yeah, but yeah, I just find building yourself like a whole sort of stable of these primitives can be really useful, because you can keep duplicating it. Also, another thing that's useful is, I wish there was a faster way to do this in Unity. Maybe there is. If someone knows, they can tell me. But you can create an empty gameplay object here. And you can put anything you want in here, really. Like say say I grab now all the meshes I used to start building my house or whatever I was building. You know, you can grab all these things and put them inside this game object here. And you can just rename this like house 1 or something. And then the nice thing about that is, you know, you can now grab house 1. It's snapped in a weird way. But you can grab house 1 and move it around however you want. You can manipulate it easily as one giant thing, which is nice and convenient. I'm thinking it's maybe, let's see, maybe that happened because I'm going to say this, maybe this object wasn't snapped. Okay, so yeah, okay, I have grids on, so you want to make sure, and this will be the transform of your new gameplay object. So you want to put it where you want the thing to be. So maybe I want this, you know, I want, like maybe I want my whole object to be right there when I move it. I want this to be the transform point. So again, I grab all these. Excuse me. And I just put them in my house 1, and now my house, oh God, what happened? Okay, I don't know what happened there. I'm very confused. Maybe it goes to the last object you selected. No, okay, I'm sorry. I think it's because I have this on. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the pivot, this little thing here. It's on the pivot point. So I think this should let me just rotate. Yeah, okay. So now when I move it around, it snaps, and I can, you know, which is useful because then I can make sure it snaps to, like, say, this wall or, you know, whatever else I want it to. So I hope that's useful to you guys. I just find, like, when I work, I like that. And then also it's nice to say you love your house, you think it turned out really well. Let me just finish it off a little bit here, somewhat. Yeah, and if you duplicate things while they're in your empty gameplay object, they will stay in the empty gameplay object. Yeah, so we move this guy around. Oh, okay, so this is your house now. So yeah, once you have this, you could build this almost like as a, you know, like I guess like a prefab really. Like say you build small, medium, large sort of layouts for your houses, right? Just imagine this has a door frame that I built a door frame and we'll be all okay. Maybe I will build a door frame. Nah, it's not worth it. um, so yeah, we can take this and then we can just, you know, duplicate the entire thing with Control D and move it however we want. And now suddenly, you know, suddenly we can just quickly repurpose this as a basis. But then it's nice because then you can go in within these objects and you can say, okay, that's a good basis, but now I want to, you know, I want to change it a bit. Now I want to make it so that it's a little different. And I can just build within this object now. And then now you have a new version of the house, and it just makes it convenient and easy to do that in that way. You could even do it with something as simple as, say I move my cube in here. And of course, you might find it, if it's even faster, of course, you can just scale the object. Like right in, I know I did some scaling of these walls in Maya, but you could also just like easily scale this cube right here. You could just make it like 0.25 high, which makes it really small, or maybe 0.125, like that. Oh, come on now. There we go. Oh, it's not. I'm sorry. My snapping is screwing me up here. You can see that. I just changed my snapping to that. Let's see if this fixes it. No? Okay. So now we have that. Now, I don't remember, and this is where we talked about game mechanics, but this kind of stuff's, it's nice if you have it set up early. And I know Josh had mentioned in the forums, he created a design document, which is nice. It's at least nice to know if you don't have it in a document, it's at least nice to know in the back of your head, you know, what your sort of the mechanics of your game are going to be, all the specs, all the metrics as sometimes they're called really. So we make this 2, let's make it 1. Make it like that. Let's make it, yeah, I'm just gonna hit play. I'm sorry, I have to move this down because I have a window. My streaming controls are, I don't think you can see them, but they're overlapping my gameplay window. So I don't think, can I step over this? Oh, okay, I can. Oh, okay, that's another thing I forgot to mention. Amelia mentioned this too. I'm walking through this. So that's the other thing you'll have to do. I'm glad that came up actually. You'll have to make sure that colliders or gameplay collision is working. So for that, we want to go to models. I think it's in here somewhere, right? Generate colliders, yeah, that's right. You want to turn these on for each one of your meshes that you want the player to collide with. And also, if you have meshes you don't want the player to collide with, like, well, like the grass prototype that this one here that Amelia had created. Does this have colliders? Yeah, she left colliders turned off. So when you have things like that that you don't want the player to collide with, it's important to remember that as well. Because you have to imagine, like, people will be playing your level design as a, you know, almost as a first pass on how the gameplay might feel. And you got to make sure as a designer, I don't think you want to have anything in your level that impedes that impression, that distracts people from what you're trying to convey. Things like bumping into objects you don't want them to bump into or not bump into. That's just one of those things that can sound trivial, but honestly, every little bit helps. Okay, so apply, right? Apply. Can I just multi-select, please? Good, I can. Thank you. For once I can. Okay, so yeah, so I guess what I was going to try here was, say you tell yourself that you figured out a good step size. Yeah, let's just say it's, oh my gosh, let's just say it's this really. And then let's see, let's make a new gameplay object here. We'll call this stairs. And we'll move our cube into it. I'll collapse some of this because it's getting too complicated. Okay. So now that our cube's here, we can just duplicate it like this. Oh, ouch. Okay, this way. And I'm sorry if this seems tedious. I just think keeping your geometry clean. This is something early in my career I didn't work on the grid. I got yelled at for not working on the grid early on. I got really too, like, my geometry was kind of all over the place, and it was distracting people from playing my work. So that's something, if you can avoid it, then why not? I say, why not avoid it and just save people the aggravation. And also it makes it easier when you start building things to like standard gameplay metrics. Like, say you say staircases are always 2 meters wide. You can see it here on the grid. And when the art team has to go and make a final, you know, molded version, maybe this is a really beautiful like tile staircase they make for you. they already know that it's built to scale. They don't have to worry about it. They can use this as a proxy, so to speak, for what they will build later. So now we have, oh, I did it again. There's the pivot there, okay. So my pivot is, oh, that's terrible, isn't it? I'm gonna grab all these guys. Yeah, and this is what I mean. I wish I could just grab these guys, like right click and tell them like add to empty gameplay object, but I have not yet seen that option, so I don't know. Okay, so we'll look at our stairs gameplay object. And again, I'm going to try to make a useful pivot point out of this. If anybody, oh boy, if anybody knows a good snap down to geometry command, that'd be great too, because I still don't know that one either. Okay, so there's that. So yeah, it's the same concept really. Once you have your stairs, you know, you can now just, whenever you need a staircase, you could just duplicate your staircase and you're good. And then you want to test it now, and you can just test it to see if your character can easily climb it. Okay, they can't. See, and that's why we do this. I forgot the reason I thought I could climb it before was just my colliders were off. So yeah. I guess it's probably good to start with the first mesh of your new gameplay object in place already. Maybe it's this then, let's see. Maybe 0.125 is the step height. It's really small for this character, I know. Yeah, it's 0.125, okay. So with that in mind, of course, now I can just duplicate my 0.125. Oh, I can't, all right. You win. You win, snap settings, you beat me again. Okay. All right. I was trying to keep it to these. This was frustrating as I was trying to keep it to this actual grid here, but 0.125 is it's at least in the same proportions, right? So here we go. I guess I'm not sure. You could even play with a little like this till it feels about right. Okay, let me try that now. This should be okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a very a very gradual staircase, but yeah, that's what I mean. The staircases end up looking weird if you build them to the scale of the player. But you know what? That's kind of an important thing to remember, though. Like they may look weird, and you might not like how they make your geo look. But if that's your game, you either have to, one of two things. You either have to talk to the people making your game. Maybe you say like the art department might even bring it up if you don't. They might even say, you know, guys, the character, the way you made your character, the way you made us have to build steps to these weird dimensions. They might argue and say you have to fix that. You have to fix your animation so the character looks good climbing up a staircase that's built to proper proportions. But in this case, we're just going to assume that we don't have that flexibility, that our character is never going to get better than this cowboy. That's the best it's ever going to get. And like here you can see even this is not really that steep, but it's at least a little better. Yeah, it's kind of weird actually. I'm not going to spend forever building this, but Regardless, I guess we discovered that 0.125 meters is the step height of this character. So just keep that in mind. I do know another thing you could do, and somebody actually, a few people have done this in the past, instead of building staircases, although once you build one, you're kind of good to go. Um, some people built, they just built ramps where there would be staircases. It kind of depends how much you feel like messing with it. Um, Another thing that's possible is, like, see, then you end up building stuff like this. Like, will the character climb this? I don't know, but it looks stupid, huh? I'm really curious to see if they'll climb this because obviously somewhere between what I built and this is possible. And I won't deal with this too much longer, so if I'm putting you to sleep, don't worry. Yeah, okay, you can actually climb that, but you can see that's kind of ridiculously steep. Like no one would build stairs that way. So the final thing I wanted to talk about in this, not today, but just in general with this this building of things. Oops, okay. Is another thing you can do is if you want to build something with a lot of funky detail, like say you're trying to convey something with a lot more nuance, right? Like say you're trying to convey, oh, I don't know, like say a fence, some kind of a fence maybe. And again, we do our, let's say I move this cube out of here. I do, let's see, create empty. Let's say I name this fence. Caps lock is on, isn't it? Yes, it is. Okay, fence. Um, and I'm going to go back to my 0.25. Yeah, okay. All right. So I don't know if maybe you knew about this, maybe you didn't, but you can add collision to, like, you can kind of fake your collision to your empty gameplay actor. Okay. So I'm just going to scale this down to 0.25, 0.25, and we'll just say 2. So say for my fence, actually even more useful than the fence, let's call it like walkway. Let's say we take this, oops, we make this 0.25. And yeah, let's make this let's make it 3. All right. So I'm going to show you just like how you can add collision to your gameplay object. So it doesn't, you don't have to worry about the maybe you build it with a lot of rough geometry that you can't really walk across easily. So say we have this, like, it looks like it's built out of like rough slats, like it'd be hard to walk across, right? And yeah, let's just say it's, let's make it 0.5 like this. Okay, we want this to be walkable, but because of the colliders, it would probably not be easily walkable. So if I go to try to walk across it, let's see what happens here. Nothing good. You can see I'm getting stuck right in one of these crevices. So you can put in a collision mesh, so to speak, just simply by, say I duplicate this guy here. Yeah, let's make him 0.5. And then we scale him. We scale him like that. So then at this point, we go into the properties of this. In fact, you could even rename this something like walkway collision. And then you can turn off the mesh renderer. So the collider is still there and you can see it as this wireframe, but the rest of it is not. The visuals are not. So then when you come to it, you could just easily walk across it. You don't have to worry about getting stuck on it. I mean, that's I hate to say it, but sadly, like a huge part at every stage of a project, a huge part of the level designer's job is going through a level and improving collision like that, like smoothing things out. Like we recently had this, what was it? It's something I was working on. We had like a really destroyed truck and it had like pieces of jagged metal sticking out everywhere, and moving around it with the player character, they would like bump into every little like piece of jagged metal around the truck. So to fix it, we just pretty much created like a giant sort of cocoon of invisible collision that made it smooth to walk around the whole thing. This was a huge part of the For Honor game too. I don't know if anyone's played For Honor, but it's all melee combat, and the last thing you want in that game is to get stuck on little pieces of geometry. I know, like Ryan, you mentioned you did stuff in Hammer, I think, right? And I realized like there was like whatever that you wrap things in invisible, like no clip or clip texture, whatever it was. I forget what it was. There was like a collision texture that you put on invisible BSP, right, where you wrapped it around all the bits of your meshes. It's funny because I play a whole lot of Team Fortress 2, which is, again, it's a Source Hammer based game. And it still drives me nuts in that game because many times they could have wrapped their maps in invisible collision, and instead I'll get like stuck on a door frame when I'm in the middle of a firefight, and it drives me nuts that they don't. I've been playing it since it came out, but it drives me nuts. They decided they didn't never cared about wrapping things like this. If you saw this in TF2, you'd probably just actually bump on every little piece of it. But I would recommend doing it whenever you can. Yeah, so that's one way I work. If something else works for you, that's fine. Also, we talked a little bit about, trying to think on this. I wanted to go back to the assignment a little bit here. Let me just grab that picture again. Yeah, so some people use this as sort of just a very basic jumping off point, or some people, they only built their level in the most basic sense of recreating what you see here. But a lot of times if you see something like this, even in a pretty basic block out, you might want to convey a certain amount of detail in what you're building so that when you build stuff beyond the concept art, you build new streets around this corner, around that corner, you build interiors, you build other streets connected to this that you can't see in this frame. You want to maintain the sense of style that you see in this concept art. And if you stray too much from it, or if you don't put quite as much thought into the overall style and scale of things like facades, like this facade right here, roofs, these small like walkways that seem to be lining the path. If you don't kind of convey that 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 sort of aesthetic throughout your level, it's possible that like things could happen in that sense. One thing is you might not convince other people on the team or the art team that your level fits into the world they're trying to build. Like say you're building a game, say this is a street in Dishonored or something. They have this sort of old European tiny street feel in a lot of the Dishonored games. Um, you know, if you're building stuff that doesn't seem like it fits here, they might have problems getting your work accepted. It might take longer to get the art style, or I should say the complete art version built from the environment artists. But if you first accurately recreate the the core feeling and the core mechanical translation of this art into your level, you'll be in a good shape if you can do that. Yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. I don't know if anyone else had any questions. Like I said, this first assignment's pretty simple, but it usually involves people just just either they're new to the tools or they're not new to the tools, but everyone gets a chance to see how everybody builds their work out, and that's why I thought I'd just share like some methods of working that might help you down the line. Like I'm sure down in future demos, you'll see me do stuff like in the same style that I'm doing here, pretty much. It's just the fastest way for me to work, but you're free to do whatever you like, really. Yeah, so I guess if nobody has any questions, I'm gonna sign off now. That's about all I really wanted to communicate. Try to teach you guys this stuff today if that's useful. Is that cool with everyone? Okay, I'm glad to hear it. Thanks for showing up. I look forward to seeing what you put together in week 2. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the forums. You can send me an email if it's something private, but the forums are the best way to post them because everyone learns from everyone else's questions, just like a traditional classroom. So please do that. Otherwise, have a good week. Bye-bye.